How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Elier Gonzalez here. So, I do want to look right now at how can I create an HTTP server. And the reason of this is in this section of the data fetching, the important to understand how do we get here by actually writing an HTTP server and see how the things work in the early days of web, right? So why is this? So we can see, or in my case, I can see for so to have a first-hand experience on how do you send data fetching in the early days of the web. So by building now an Node.js server using or an HTTP server, particularly using JavaScript as a language, using the environment called nodes that allows to run or write JavaScript applications that runs on top of the OS and have access to certain interface that the OS exposed to, and we can have access to those interface like the network card or the CPU thanks to the C++ bindings, or in other words, these system calls that the language, the C++ allows to call to the OS. So this is a very good explorations of how all of these different pieces joins together to get a full picture of what is data fetching, at least in right now the modern web development. So the TLDR to actually getting to this is that the way how you did that on the browser, it was using now an HTML So you have now a particular tag that is coming from as part of the documents, and documents are these files that we want to transmit over the cable across different computers. These computers that initially, if you want to share this data across them, you need to connect them. And in order to do that, you need to, plug is a right now the Ethernet cable to a router, and that router is going to connect through other routers until the entire long chains of routers and internet service providers and switch make that connections available, make that physical connection available to that computer. So and once that is done, in order to send this kind of data, because this was developed by by DARPA, the development agency, the Development Advanced Research Project Agency at the U.S. as a response to what the Russians did via the Sputnik in when they launched the first satellites to the moon or to the around the Earth. And so that causes a surprise to Eisenhower, and that leads now to the creation of this agency in response to threats. So anytime that you use this kind of applications, all of them was developed by the military branch, or the military industrial complex, in order to control, manipulate, or controlling commands, and also kill people along the way. So again, this was based on military use. That at the beginning of this, it was an initiative in conjunction with the universities and the military branch that they have all of these different computers where DARPA initially was to detect is radiation and seismic activity. This is why fields like geology and cosmology actually explode, because now they were funded by the government contracts. So the TLDR is that now this computers stuff and how do you connect them, it was it was something interesting by DARPA, that they now started to fund all of these universities and what they're doing. So on the initial draft, you can actually look at this primitive way of connecting, or at least have a diagram, pretty much like a floor, like a floor plan of a house, right? But in this case, it's connecting all of these computers. So you have universities like the UCLA, the MIT, the Texas, so among others, right? And because as they add more and more computer, it becomes quite hard to manage, because it becomes more like a control border problems. Pretty much what we look right now in the U.S. when they have these migration problems, because they are the one who now provide more economic opportunities, improve of living standards, allegedly, but right now that's not the case. But in any case, most of this people that comes that cross the border, right? That's the promise here. So because the more people that you accept in your community, or in this case in your network, the more check you have to put in place in order to see if those people actually gonna behave according to your own rules in the house, right? This is somewhat similar to what happened on networks. So how do you make sure that these particular computers now behave and you can so they work as expected? So Vincent Cerf and Ken, I don't know his complete names. He come up with this idea that instead of focusing on the control management or this control border problem, let's going to focus on how the protocol, how the communications happens at device. So now we have is this TCP/IP, right? Transmission control protocol, that say how these devices are going to communicate, and those part of or one of those specs on that protocol is that the port they're gonna use. So you can take a look at that on the TCP. So, but in any case, in order to find computers in this network, the location, the address, similar as the house or a company address, right? So they need to have some sort of ID or an address. This is what we have the internet protocol, right? So they put all of these different so you have now assigned a number to the computer. So now these computers can be identified and accessed through command and control. So with the evolution now of technologies to interact with other computers, to command and control remotely. So for example, SSH libraries that allow you to command and control that computer, or the transfer files using the file transfer protocols. So with the in the 90s, a bunch of scientists that they have all of these different documents that they need to share across different computers in the universities. So they started to create now a particular language to describe these kind of documents. And not only that, is a protocol on how you can transfer those product or documents over the cable. But this document is not only to render text or image, which is quite interesting, but also video and and audio, and provide now interactivity. So, for example, WebLG or animations or games into that, right? So this is why we have this thing called hypertext. So hypertext is this any type of media here, and in order to transmit this type of documents over this network, so they design is this hypertext transfer a hypertext transfer protocol. We can take a look at that protocol, but that's not the goal of today's video, right? Let me actually pull that up real quick here. Yeah, now that we're on the browser, there you got it, which is this HTTP living standard HTTP protocol. There you got it. Protocol. There you got it. Okay. Like this one. Come on. I'm okay. I want the, and I don't want you. I want directly is this one. Hypertext transfer protocol status code register. Not this one, but this is the code. I'm more interested on the ambient status code. Oh my god. Okay. Diana, the list. Well, this is also a good segue here. So IANA is now the authority, or the internet assigned number authority that pulls all of this. So it's responsible for assigning all of this address to, right? And one of those things that also is oversee is this status code. Let me see if this take me to where I want to go, which is the HTTP, by the way. No, HTTP protocol, right? Wow, I do want to, Jesus. Okay. Website, right? Okay. So Mozilla is so pervasive. I wanna, oh my god. Wow, I think it's this. No, the dev. Okay, I'll definitely take. Jesus. Let me see the reference here. The external links. Okay, working group. The official website. Wow. Okay, it's OR. Okay, so it is under the umbrella. Okay, it is under that umbrella. And this is a particular pattern that we're going to see, and I'm going to describe that briefly. That is the WG. So, because this is now overseen by a working group that wants to continuously look at how the HTTP protocol evolve. So here I'm looking right now is at just briefly mention what this protocol is, right? So yes, that's great. So this is what the HTTP protocol stands for: Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So it is a stateless application level protocol for distributed collaborative hypertext information systems. So that's exactly what I'm actually going to build in today's video. Is this hypertext information system, or this application that is going to run on top of the server or a computer, And then I want us to now send a document, particularly with the HTTP form, and then capture that once the user sends to. So that's the reason of today's video. So if I go now back to this, particularly to the HTTP server, so what I have done is I actually define here the things that I have done. Let me see if I can do this. Is this all right? I do want is to look at that. No. Okay. Okay, I know what is this. Okay, I just want us to open it. This. How can I open it? K. Okay. Command K. Command V. There you got it. And then I want to say command K. Command M. No. If I want to expand this. No, split no. So I want to maximize this. And there you go. Okay, cool. Now let me actually is hide here the file explorer and do this. Yeah, let me do this. Okay, how can I undo? I'll go back to this. Okay, is this and this. There you got it. Right. So I just want to is add this particular checkboxes. Okay, when you allow to add these checkboxes like that, well, it'll work for this. So far, so this is a step, right? So initialize the node project. Again, as I mentioned before, what it's doing, install TypeScript. I already did that. Install the compiler and then initialize the projects. So initialize the node project is using the npm. You must already have node installed, but also you need to initialize the projects. So using is now npm init. So you run that. Also, you need to install locally here TypeScript and then initiate the project here, which is initialize TypeScript configurations, and then define the server, at least in Node, which is pretty straightforward. I can show you that real quick, right? So what I did here is just, hey, I do want to have access to this interface that the environment is exposing to create now an HTTP server using that particular model. And then once I do that, anytime or on any request, I want to listen to and then send some response, right? Which is what I'm doing here, right? On any incoming requests, I want you to now is, well, handle this for me. And then I started to listen to incoming requests. And then I say something like this. So this is great because I already did that, all right? So I can put it now here, this, and the other is this. There might be some challenge that you will encounter when you start in the configuration here, right? So for example, hey, you need to add the types in the nodes typing. So this is actually makes so the TypeScript compiler is aware of this, and you also need to explicitly tell what are the files that you want to include. Particularly in this case, I did this. And the same, what are the files that you want to exclude from the evaluation. So once I run that, it's going to generate a server .js, all right? And that file is what is going to be used by Node to run the server. So if I look at now the here, this is exactly how I am running a basic running the TypeScript compilations and with a basic HTTP server. Okay, so this is pretty much the idea here. So instead of modifying the JavaScript, I'm going to do that on TypeScript and receive any of these typing helpings that are useful as you write your code. So in any case, so if I go back to this is the preview here, and then I do this. So I already define it, well, I already initialize the TypeScript. I define a file to create a server. I create a server in the port, in this case, 3000. Yep, in this case 3000, and then I'm going to send a document here, right? Similar for this, right? Yep, similar for this. I'm going to create now a document here, and let me also initialize is get, you know, because we do want to keep track of the different possible state that my file can be. So here I have to do this and this and that. So update all of the index manually. It's not fun, not at all. And then I'm gonna say, hey, initialize the git repo. Okay. And let me let me do that here. So git init here. I already initialized that. I need to add now a git ignore file. Git ignore and define what are the folders that you want to ignore. For example, no models here. That's one. And then some ds store as well. I think it's ds store, because sometimes that something is uploaded without your consent. In this case, I do not have that, but that's fine. It's more files related to the JavaScript to Mac, sorry. And here we are. Okay, so let me do a couple things here, which is for example is git add all of these files here, and git commit or git status, check the status here, and git commit here with say hey initial commit. All right, that's right. And now well, actually is going to the next step, which is send an HTML document that contains the HTML form. So good question, how can I do that? So instead of sending now data as hello world, And if I now spin up the server real quick here, I know that I have that. Okay, the server now is running on port 3000, and then if I say let's go to look at the port 3000, I am here. So instead of actually receiving that, I want to receive is a document. So the browser here is sending that request to remember, quick recap, the browser, which is an application that is running on the OS, is interacting with the interface that the OS exposed to. So by running or by calling is this interface like the network interface, and explicitly tells where do you want to go, where do you want to send a request. Particularly, I have here running on my local computer, but it can be in any other computer around the world. So in that case, that remote computer, which live right now in development locally, respond with this piece of information. So the browser now paint this in this nice little way, but that's it, right? This is what the server is responding. But I want to send is now an HTML document. So this is a good question, and that is, how do I send that HTML documents? So instead of sending now is this data as it is, I can say is, well, let me is send something like this. You know, I don't want to send now is a JSON. All right. What I do want to send now is a stream, so the browser can detect that stream. So I can say here is the HTML. Let me define here the HTML and say, hey, let's going to send this like this, right? Let me do that more quickly here by going into the index.html, and then a couple questions come up here, which is, what is the structure of the HTML? How this HTML is going to look like? Well, this is the reason. So as you can see here, right, that I'm in the HTML, is that how this HTML thing looks like, right? What is the HTML document at the end of the day? Well, let's take a look is now at the spec, the living standard, the HTML spec living standard here. All right. So in this living standard is describing is what this is all about, right? And the TLDR is that this is the faucet. That kind of thing is to me quite interesting, and how they describe that. I don't know why this website sometimes hangs. Okay, I get it. All right. Yes, this website hangs horrible, at least in my browser. Okay, but here it is. So this is what this specification is and what HTML is. Who maintains the spec, which is what WG, Working Hypertext Application Technical Working Group. Okay, and there is a little bit of background and who is this document for, right? So it tells that you must be aware of what is the DOM, what is the web IDL, what is an HTTP, which is something that I mentioned, what is XML, and what is Unicode, character encoding, JavaScript, and CSS. In other words, DOM is the way of how you respond to events based on this document, or the event model canceling and DOM structure or DOM nodes. This DOM node is describing, again, don't take my word for granted, but this DOM, again, looking at this living standard, all right, defines a platform-neutral model for events, aborting activities, and nodes tree. It actually doesn't describe what this is because this particularly documents as one of the things that they describe here in the scope is that it was not meant to be educational. It focused on accuracy or precisions. It sacrificed clarity for precisions, as I put it here. So, in brevity for completeness. So in any way, that's what the DOM is. It allows you now describe this, the structure of this document via the living standard here, right? This specification depends on the infra, and some of the term is using here and diggy. A tree is a finite hierarchical tree structure in tree order. Is pre-ordered, depth first traversal of a tree. So this is now getting into the deep with data structure and stuff like that. And an object that participates in a tree has a parent here, and you can see now how this structure is going to look like. But what is relevant again in today's video is to briefly describe is what the DOM is, also what the web IDL is, which is the interface definition language, that again is another living standard that describe why you don't put it here, at first. Okay, so it defines is what are the interfaces or the functionality that the browsers needs to implement. Okay, so you can look at here at the basics things or the basic operation that they must implement here. So for example is a number of features that allow the behavior of common script objects in the web platform to be specified more readable. So how interface described with web IDL correspond to the construct with JavaScript execution environment, and is also detailed. Concretely, the web IDL provides a syntax for specifying the surface API of the web platform, as well as JavaScript binding that detail how these APIs manifest as JavaScript's construct. In other words, is that how you can, via the JavaScript, access to this functionalities that the platform provides to us. This is what the web IDL is all about. What are those functionality, you might wonder? And that's a very good question. Again, this describing is the definition of how they do that. Okay, so for example, you can take a look at that iterative declaration, asynchronous iterable declarations, you see. But again, this is what these browsers should implement and how they should work, right? So yeah, I will leave that to you to later on look into that, right? Yeah. But this is part of this. I'm gonna leave that open here. The other is the HTTP. As I already showed you what this is. The XML, which is, well, how do you now extend this particular markup language? Ways to define is specific documents. So in our case, the HTML documents, like this. Unicode is now these huge tables that contain is symbols in an index of symbols, all right, mapped to a number, and that mapping, the process of mapping, that is known as the character encodings. All right, so you have several character encodings that it has it has evolved over time, because initially that table start with only the English, and then it expands to describe is now French and Germans and Spanish and Portuguese, and then the Latin vocabularies or grammar, and also expands to Middle East like Farsi, and also to other language like Cyrillic, the Cyrillic alphabet, and also for hands-based characters. So because of this evolution, right? Initially it's a start as ASCII, and then we have is the UTF-8 and UTF-16s to represent, well, more of these characters, okay? So this is what the character encoding is. So far we haven't encountered more humans, at least on Earth. Who knows? But in any case, and then you have now this scripting language that describe how you're going to respond to provide interactivity, and again, how you can interact with web. First, how you can provide now interactivity to web applications and access to the interface provided by the web platform. I'll be right back. So this is it, right? And the other is how now this document, the styling of this document. So got it. Now, again, how these elements we're going to look like, right? How does the structure, the initial structure of this, and it is all boils down to, I'm scrolling up here real quick to show you is that, or I already did this. So yeah, this is the introduction, all right? And where does the specification fit? And describing the audience, describing also is the scope of this, is just to describe that. Okay, it provides the semantic level markup language and the association semantic level scripting APIs. So it doesn't describe all of the things that I have mentioned before. All right. So this is a little bit of history, which is quite interesting, and I'm not going to get into the details here. And finally is, well, how is different from HTML and XML, and the structure. Okay, this is the structure of this specification. And yeah, it's like how to read that, and a quick introduction to HTML. A basic HTML document looks like this, right? So let's go to read this real quick. Give me a second. I'll be right back. All right. So this is the, again, they say that this section is not normative, but that's what this living standard is. There's a reason why it exists. So you have now this structure. So HTML document consists of a tree of elements and text. Each element is denoted in the source by a star tag. So let's gonna look at what this star tag is, right? And this actually takes forever, but I think it's the browser, man. I think it's the browser that yeah, I think it's the browser, man. I definitely think that this is the browser, bro. Is it living standard? It's the living standard, man. It's the website. That's pretty fucked up. That it takes too much time, bro. Jeez, and it hangs the browser. I don't know what you're loading behind the scenes. You don't even take me to that. Come on. Anyway, start tag. Here we are. Start tag must have the following format. Okay, start tag. Interesting. Okay, so that's start tag. Okay. HTML document consists of a tree of elements and text. Each element is denoted in the source by a start tag such as the body and an end tag such as the body. Certain start tags and end tags are certain case be omitted and are implied by other tags. Tags has to be nested such that elements are completely within each other without overlapping here, like this. This is a very run. There you got it. So, but this is how the things work. These specifications define a set of elements that can be used in HTML along with the rules about the way in which the elements can be nested. Elements can have attributes which control how elements works. In this example, there is an hyperlinks in this particular text. Attributes are places inside of a start tag and consist of a name and value. This is part of the fundamentals, man. Okay? Because most of the time, developers don't know this, and I don't blame them. But you need to read the docs, bro. Separated by a character, but an equal character. The attribute value can remain unquote if it doesn't contain ASCII white space. Or this, otherwise it has to be quoted using either single or double quotes. The value along with the equal character can be omitted altogether if the value is an empty string. So for example, like in these cases, the HTML user agents, aka the browser, then parse, and this is interesting that they call him like this, user agents, because at the end of the day, it is pretty self-descriptive. Those are agents or applications that are going to be managed by the user. So the HTML user agents, the browsers, then parse this markup, turning into the DOM. It's up to the user agent. Parse this markup and turn into a DOM tree. A DOM tree is an in-memory, it lives now in the RAM, representation of a document. The DOM tree contains several kinds of nodes, in particular a document types, element, text node, and comment. And this, oh my God, reading these foundations to me is like, this is what it needs to do. So in particular, a document type, element node, text node, and comment nodes, and in some cases processing instructions node. That's very interesting. So the markup snippet at the top of this section will be turned into the following DOM tree. So you have now the doc type of HTML, the doc type node, you have also the HTML node, okay, like HTML heads, title, and so on and so forth. You also have now the text node. Here on the head there is no text. Here on the text there is no head. And the title, it say now sample page, right? And then you have now comment nodes, right? Like comments node. This is a comment, and in some cases processing unit. So the document element of this tree is an HTML element, which is the elements always found in the position in the HTML documents. And it contains two elements, the head, the body, as well as the text node between them. But I just want to read about this, right? This is the first section. This DOM tree can be manipulated from a script in page, right? A script, typically in JavaScript, a small program that can be embedded using script elements or using events handlers content attributes. For example, here is a form with a script that set the value of the form output. Oh my God, no, what it did, no, come on. No, Jesus. Okay. There you got it. Sorry about that. Output element to say hello world like this. Okay. So form.name main, and you can also have, okay, for example, here's a form with a script that sets the value of the form output element to say hello world. You say, hey, let me get that element. All right. Document forms main elements result of value here. Each element in the DOM tree is represented by an object, and these objects have APIs, so they can be manipulated. For instance, a link can have its href attribute changed in several ways. So by getting that access through the document here, and get me is the first element that you find, but using now the document.link, or change the destination of the URL, or change even the protocol, or set the attributes here. So since DOM tree are used in ways to represent the HTML document when they are processed and presented by implementations, especially interactive applications like web browsers, this specification is mostly phrased in terms of DOM tree instead of markup described above. HTML documents represent a media-independent description of interactive content. HTML documents might be rendered to a screen or through a speech synthesizer or on a braille display. And that's interesting because you have now different places where you can render this braille display here. That's pretty fucked up, bro. Braille display. So people blind can now perceive content here. That's a mind-bending shit, nigga, bro. Oh my god, that's a. Oh, if this is a new universe. This is definitely a new universe. So people from there can now perceive that. Braille display, bro. Oh, okay. Braille displays. For example, YouTube. People using this, right? Braille display here. Oh, a Google for education.
Students read text output from a computer using their sense of touch. As you'd probably guess, this can be really beneficial for low vision and blind students who read Braille, but I've also found that kids are really interested in watching their classmates use the tool, which does a lot for teamwork. Braille displays also work with sheets and slides, but for now, let's just walk through how to use it with Google Docs. First, you're going to want to make sure the Chromebox screen reader is turned on, which you can do through the Chromebook accessibility settings or just by pressing Ctrl-Alt-Z as in zebra. With that out of the way, go ahead and navigate to the Tools menu in Google Docs, select accessibility settings, and turn on screen reader support and Braille support. And that's it. You can use the cursor routing buttons on the Braille display to move the cursor like this. And you can still use your Braille display for a lot of the screen reader and Google Docs keyboard shortcuts that you might be used to, like making text bold with Ctrl-B. You can also adjust a handful of other Chromebook Braille settings in the Chromebox options page, which you can access by pressing Search and O, then O again, or through the Chromebox menu panel. Now that you're all caught up, you can give Braille display a try with your students. For more info about this, check out the links below and feel free to leave a comment about how you use Braille displays with your students. Thanks for watching.
Interesting. As a blind person, this video helps a ton. I don't know if that's it. Oh my god. I don't know if that was a joke or not. Even though, well, got it. So that's mind-bending. So these kind of documents can parse by different web user agents, and not only as video, but Jesus fucking why? This is kind of annoying. So not only so HTML document might be rendered into a screen or through a speech synthesizers or to a brightly display, and that's something that I didn't know about this. Read the docs, bro. Read the docs. So yeah, to influence exactly how to use rendering text place, authors can use a styling such as CSS. In the following example, the page has been made yellow on blue using CSS, right? So again, this is how you describe now a HTML document. So for more detail on how to use HTML, authors are encouraged to consult tutorials and guides. Some of the examples including this specification might be used, but this novice author is cautioned that this specification by necessity defines the language with a level defines the language with a level of detail that might be difficult to understand at a first. The TLDR is that in order to define an HTML document, this is the structure. This is how it's going to look like. And writing secure applications, and again, something even here is telling you is writing secure applications, so not validating user input, cross SQL injections, click hijacking, and common pitfall to avoid when using the scripting API, how to catch mistake when writing HTML, and so on and so forth. But the TLDR is that this is how you now identify or how you can create is a document. Let's write. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's definitely do this. Please come with me over here, because now that I understand what I'm going to send, and it's up to the web, the user agents, which is a fancy word to say the browser, is going to receive this string, and it's up to them to parse that and render visually. Okay, let's get into it. So this is the doc type. Okay, so this is known as the doc type doc type HTML, okay, to indicate now to browsers that this is now an HTML5 version. And then next to that you say, okay, this is now the HTML, the root element here, and I can specify is the okay, and then I can specify is the HTML document, the language of this document, like LAN in this case, yeah, English, and the different sections. So for example, now the body, all right, for example, but I can also define some meta information about this, which is known as the head, right? Metadata informations. So for example, some of those metadata or data that describe this document is the title, and here I say is the hello world, right? Hello world. And then inside of the body, I just want to only render is this, say H1, right? And say, hey, hello world. So cool, because now with this, I can do a couple things. I can send this to make it easy to test. And now, come on, and now, because this is already as a string, I don't need to stringify anything. I can just say it's the HTML document. So now that I save this, and then I go to the the browser or user agents, and then I refresh, I think that it didn't detect that change, right? And now when I do this, so now I receive this as a string. And it is interesting because it's not parsing this, right? So allegedly you should parse this, right? Yeah, allegedly you should parse this, right? But it sent me as a string here. That's interesting. So how can I make sure that I send now I already sent that as a string, okay? I already sent that as a string, but how can I make sure that the browsers can now render this, okay? How can I indicate to the browser, hey, I'm sending is this. Yeah, I'm sending is this. Yeah, I'm sending is this. So please render it. You know, please render it. Right? That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, please render it. Right? Please render it. So I need to somehow tell the server to send this as an HTML document or something like that. So let's go to now, in this case, ask Claw about this. So right now I am with Claw. Get real. Get real. Open a new one. All right. Okay. Yeah, I trust this folder. How can I make sure the user agent detect the HTML document that I am sending in the server.ts, right? Okay, in the header here. Makes sense. Makes a ton of sense. So because, because the response here, which is what I'm indicating to the browser, is that, hey, the content of this is a JSON. But no. Now the content here is different. The content here is, there's no suggestions. But no. On the response, look at what I'm doing here. Makes sense. So what I'm doing here is this. Hey, I can also define some prettier here, but in any case, so what I'm doing here, yeah. Let me define here also prettier here. No, prettier. See, you know. And now help me here with the formatting here. Let me also add that, add auto formatting. Here is this, and then 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Okay, do the auto format is initialize the node, initialize git, install the TypeScript, initialize TypeScript, create the server, define the server, and then you got it here. All right. Set prettier for co-formatting. Okay, there you got it. Right. And that's interesting. Okay, so let me do this and say now this. All right, let me add is this and say add co-formatting, right? Place added to the commit. And that'll be all right now here. Okay, yeah, so this is something that I can add that later. But now here's when I specify here right in the header about the content type. This is another good segue to say what is content type, especially in the response here, where I can look at the content type here. Well, it turns out that this is something related to the HTTP semantics here. So for example, like content type, and you may say, how do you know about this? Content type. Well, because again, what I'm trying to access here, the piece of information that the write head function describes is the request and response. Is this particular mode. So here is the content type here. All right. And I do want to know, so the content type headers field indicates the media type of the associated representation, either the representation enclosed in the message content on the selected representations as determined by the message semantic. The indicated media type defines both the data format and how the data is intended to be processed by the recipient. Content type, defines the format and how the recipient, in this case the browser or whoever is requesting that resource, is going to process that. So within the scope of the received message semantics, after any context coding indicated by content encoding are the code. So media types are defined in the section 8.9. An example of these fields is like this. So in other words, this is how I need to define this. The media type, so okay, this is a couple examples here on this. Holy moly, bro. Right now, if you're not looking what I'm looking at, but it's this. So this is content type, part of the HTTP request as a way to indicate to the recipient the data format and how it's going to be processed. That. So in our case, I can send this using this standard as an HTML, or I can use is this. All right. Let's go with this example. My question is that where can I look more about the possible values? There you got it. Now, but where I can look at the possible values here. Media types up to be registered by INI according to the procedures defined in here. Yeah, but again, what is the possible values here of the media type or particularly the content type. If the content type has header field is not present, the recipient may either assume a media type of application octet string. Okay, so selected representations here. But again, it doesn't tell me is the possible values. This is the counting encoding, but it doesn't tell me is the possible values here. Media types are defined here as an example. Okay, so this is the media type, content type, and accept, right? The content type and accept. Okay. Okay, and the format here. Okay, so I set encodings, and this is what it is. So it makes a ton of sense. So it makes a ton of sense. So based on that example, okay, let's go back here and say this. Hey, response. This is actually the HTML that the recipient should process. It's going to receive and should process that. Now, as here, if I run the server locally, right? The server.js is already updated properly. I can take a look at that here with now this, all right? And then if I go back to the browser, right, particularly here, and then I run this, now the browser, the recipients detected that a format of this data being sent as an octet string, and they now perform the operation it needs. In this case, this user agent rendering the content as an HTML. Good, because now after that, let me actually save that, sending or send init HTML string. Okay, search HTML string as it is, right? And so now that I'm sending as an octet strings over the cable, right? All of this happens locally, right? But over the cable, so now this is what the server or this another computer responds with this. So far, so good. So I do want to add now is a form here, right? I want to add now a form here, right? And instead of this form, this is where I want to look now at the form, but that'll be later on. That'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.